Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. For a while now, I've been wanting to do a video on the impending entrance of Brian Michael Bendis into the Superman titles, and I've been wanting to speak on that for a while, but I thought that as I'm reading the most recent Superman run by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason, I thought this would be a nice touchstone into that conversation, because part of what I have to say does have to do with both Tomasi and Jurgens' work on the Superman titles so far. So first, I'd like to review the most recent issue and this most recent story arc that's recently in progress in the Superman titles. Superman 44 just recently came out yesterday, and this is the Bizarroverse. This is part 3 that just came out, and it looks to be some more as well, I believe. Well, I don't know, actually. It does end on a bit of a cliffhanger. I don't know exactly how many parts there are going to be. I'm sure there's information out there, but I haven't bothered looking it up. But I like to kind of just follow the story and see what I can. It's been a joy to read. So Dan Jurgens on Action Comics has given us just amazing stories, and if you have missed any of that run, I highly recommend you go back and check it out, but especially his last issue. If you missed Action Comics 999, just out a couple of weeks ago, that was just such a special issue. Really bittersweet, because it was such a great story, but it's also very bitter to know that he's leaving now, and that's one of my problems. Believe it or not, I'm not all doom and gloom about Bendis coming, but I have valid concerns, and they're weighty. And one of my issues with the whole thing is that these titles have been basically yanked from Jurgens and Tomasi, who had both planned on continuing their storylines and had plans to develop these things further. So I'm a little upset about that. I don't know what Bendis has ever done to merit being able to waltz in on the red carpet rolled out so thoroughly for him here at DC. So definitely recommend checking out Action Comics 999 if you can still get your hands on a copy. And this has been a great little story arc in Superman as well. So Tomasi just did some great work in the Superman run. For a time he stepped away. We had James Robinson come in and tell this really awful, very thinly veiled politically motivated story, which wasn't a bad. I mean, it was Superman, doing Superman stuff, but it was just very not up to par for James Robinson's ability. He's capable of telling some great stories, but he was definitely just playing his social politics in that story. So it's nice to have Tomasi back, and Patrick Gleason is co-writing this arc with him. We have Doug Mahnke on art, pencils, and inks, and some other people involved with some inks and color and whatnot. The story is so great because you've got the Superman family and everything's just perfect. You've got the relationship between Superman and John is just what it should be, and they go on this adventure together, and it does include Bizarro, and they find that Bizarro, through previous stories where he had ended up in this world where he could sort of create his own little universe and make it around him. So he's created his Bizarro universe as a Bizarro reflection, of course, of Superman's. So he has a Bizarro Lois, he has a Bizarro son, John, and the universe is unsteady because of things within himself that are unsteady. Echoes something that was going on in Superman's story a while back as well. He was out of sync with the sun. This was before Superman Reborn, so it's a little vague as to how that fits in now that everything has been combined, but that's the basic gist. What I love so much about this story is that it really utilizes Bizarro to the greatest effect. And I love stories that do that, because he's a profound character, and he's a very moving character in how you can have Superman interact with him, and especially to have Superman be teaching his son John how to interact with the Bizarro world and John's very own Bizarro. There's a Superboy Zorro that comes to seek out John, so that's a profound story. And that's because Bizarro is such a unique villain. On the surface, he seems just silly, right? He's this sort of dark copy, reverse reflection of Superman. He speaks backwards and speaks in this really confusing way. Some people are just fluent in Bizarro. I've never understood how they can do that, but he speaks in these backward ways. And his powers are even reversed to a certain extent. He'll have freeze vision instead of heat vision. And when the stories are told correctly, Superman is so patient with Bizarro, because Bizarro's dangerous. He's a villain, but he's not a liable villain. You can't really always lay the blame on him because of his understanding and because of his limited cognitive ability. And I think that's such a cool possibility to really tell some stories that aren't straight allegories or anything, but can really help us understand what it's like to deal with people who don't have the same neuro processes and the same way of seeing the world and the same neuro capabilities. For example, my own daughter is on the autistic spectrum, and there are certain ways we have to speak to her to get her to understand. There are certain things we can't say that she just won't understand, certain metaphors or ways of speaking or whatever. And so you have to speak a certain way. And a lot of people understand this who are in the public service sphere or law enforcement or whatever. And it's good for those people to be educated. And it's great to see something like a comic book being a tool to get people thinking along those lines. And again, it's not a straight metaphor. It's not reducing the character of these stories to just little, thin lessons about that, but it's all built into the characters and it's built into the story. And Superman really shows his strength of character and his meekness and his true heart in trying to reach Bizarro on every level. And he does so in this story, and not only Bizarro, but Superboy Zorro as well. There was a great story if you're looking for a good example of this, and I wish I could remember the title of it, but if you just look up Bizarro in the Adventures of Superman run that came out right before Rebirths began, and that was a digital first, I believe, but they're all collected now into trade paperbacks, and there's a really touching Bizarro story in that. And so Bizarro's a great character because of that. In addition, he's also an example of how Superman is willing to confront dark reflections of himself. Psychologists will tell you that the things that irritate you the most in other people are those traits in them that you recognize within yourself and that you are insecure about, are upset about, are trying to purge yourself of, and you have a very sensitive spot because of these traits. So if you see them exhibited in somebody else in the outside world, that makes you feel an almost subconscious shame, and that's why you are so irritated by those traits in other people. Now, it might not be exhibited in the same manner. You might not do the same things that other people are doing that are irritating you so much, but you feel the possibility of it within yourself. That's the idea. And that's no better picture of that than Bizarro and Superman, because Bizarro is all of the power and capability of Superman, but without all the self-control, without the understanding, without the knowledge, self-control, compassion that Superman has that reins himself in all the time. So you can easily imagine how seeing that happen, I mean, that's got to touch some insecurities within Superman. Not that he's insecure, but just things that he would always be guarding about. And I think that the fact that he's always lending such a helping hand to Bizarro and always being so patient with him is a really great lesson too, a great sort of tacit lesson on how to deal with other people in the world, but also ourselves ultimately, and the things within ourselves that we feel shame about or feel not quite up to par about, that we can extend that own same patient hand to ourselves as well as the people around us who would exhibit those traits, and try to move past that. So just another great example of how Superman as a mythological character really resonates and speaks to us on all these different little psychological levels. That's just so brilliant. And Gleason and Tomasi have really tapped into that with this story. Like I said, I can't really tell if this is the end or if there will be. I mean, I know there must be some resonances. They must go back to this story somehow, because it ends on an ending that needs to be addressed, certainly. So Bendis is coming, and this will soon be over, and that's a sad thing. It's a sad thing that this is over. Now, I'm not anti-Bendis just as a writer, as a person, or whatever. I know some people who've been making videos or are writing about this are very upset because of his involvement in the recent Marvel, the social justice warrior inclinations, and of course Bendis comes straight from Iron Man, and most recently they really just killed off Iron Man, put him in a coma, whatever, got him out of the way because he's a rich white guy, and we need to get him out of the way so we can have some more diversity, and they brought Riri Williams in as a character, and that's the basic idea that people are upset about. I never followed the story. I don't like that mechanism at all. I think that's a horrible idea for the Marvel Universe and for the Iron Man story in particular. The notion of an Ironheart, of Riri Williams coming in as an Ironheart, that's fine, whatever, that's great, more the merrier if you can write it well, but the idea of having to get Tony out of the way, I think is kind of silly in the way it was executed. But I don't really know if that's Bendis' doing or the editorial mandates, because knowing how jacked up everything is at Marvel. Even now, as they're trying to do their fresh starts, they're just sort of shuffling the same cards and hoping no one will notice, and they can just throw some number ones on the covers and people will forget about it or whatever. But so I don't really know where the makings of that was. I do know that Bendis has written some great stuff that I've appreciated. Some of his Spider-Man work and Jessica Jones work I thought has been quite nice. So it's not that I don't think he can do it, but I don't, as I said before, I don't understand why we're rolling out the red carpet for him and yanking these titles from other writers who are doing such a great job. I also don't understand why DC, and why I know why, it's Dan DiDio who's never made a good decision in his life about comic books. He's putting all of DC's Superman eggs in the Brian Michael Bendis basket. This is utterly ridiculous. Not only is he going to be writing both Action and Superman, but then he's also going to have the Man of Steel run. And there's some precedent for parts of this with the olden days with John Byrne. But that was after a crisis, and that was really trying to reestablish the character. We're not reestablishing anything here. We finally got our Superman back, our Superman Rebirth and then Reborn, and we finally have our guy, and it's great to know that we're going to get the trunks back. But I don't like any more shakeups at this point. Now, you can't just keep things stagnant. Of course, the characters and the story arcs and progressions have to go places, and that's fine. But the other thing that really concerns me and frankly angers me is the way they've marketed this whole transition into the Bendis titles, because now we're told to expect some major changes, major shakeups, and we're told that many of them are Dan DiDio's ideas. That's terrifying. Seriously, Dan DiDio, his big claim to fame has been the New 52 with Jim Lee, and that was awful. No matter how many people want to say, well, I liked it. Well, that's fine, but the sales numbers don't lie. And after those spectacle sales, it was just plummeting. And thank God for Rebirth coming in and refusing some heart and some life and charm into the DC universe once more and bringing these characters back to their core. And Dan DiDio has been sort of quiet. We haven't really heard his name much since then because people have had to come in and clean up his mess. And now here he pipes up again and he's doing all these changes. So I'm very nervous about that. Very, very nervous about DiDio's involvement. But I'm willing to give it a chance, and I hope it's good. But other things that Bendis has said is very frustrating because he's being so vague. And I understand that you can't give all the details away if you're going to be teasing a new run. There's some ideas you're doing. You're not going to outline them all right away. You want people to buy the comics and read them. That's fine, but I don't like the way that they've teased it and the way that Bendis has said in interviews, and you can look them up. They're all there for everybody to see. But he said that people are nervous about the Superman Lois Lane marriage because is he going to do something with that? And he basically said they should be nervous because it's a beautiful thing and it's a wonderful thing, and they should be nervous because it's fragile, or not. He didn't use the word fragile, but something like that, basically hinting that I might mess that up. You know, why would you even say that? That you're not going to earn any points by doing that. I understand that they can't have a bump-free story throughout the comics forever now, and maybe we can do something like Lois gets on assignment and they have to be physically away from each other for a while, and that's difficult or something. That's fine. But I swear to God, Bendis, if you break that couple up, if you undo some of the wonderful Superman stories that we've waited so long to get back, and we've waited so long to have this character back, you're messing with fire, sir. That's all I have to say. Other things he said he's been vague about, he wants to infuse more of Superman's Jewish origins. Now, Superman, the character in the DC universe, doesn't have Jewish origins, of course, but Siegel and Schuster, his creators, were young Jewish men, of course, and I don't know what he means by that. If he's going to try to retcon Superman as suddenly now he's Jewish, or he's been going to synagogue all of his life, that's never been part of the character. That you can't just completely remake that now. Now there are ways that he could infuse some more of the character's Jewish heritage in terms of creation into the stories, which would be neat. He could draw on a little bit more of the Gollum mythos and traditions. Perhaps we find out that Mar Pa Kent was half Jewish or something like that, or he has a relative or whatever. It'd be wonderful to see him teaching John some different beliefs in the world or whatever. That could be heartwarming. So there are ways to do it well. I don't necessarily think that he's going to take the horrible road on all of these issues, but I'm worried because Dan DiDio's involved and because of the way in which Bendis is teasing it. Also, what's with this ad they keep putting in every comic book? The 2-page spread, Bendis is coming. That sounds ominous, and that freaks me out. That's not, I don't really know anybody who's excited that Brian Michael Bendis is coming to the Superman titles because he's Brian Michael Bendis. There's just nothing about him as a writer or his career that screams Superman. And that's not a reason that he can't write Superman. I hope he comes on and everything's wonderful. I'm going to give it a chance, certainly. But just the way they're handling it is so enigmatic to me. I don't understand what their thinking is. And all I can keep... The only conclusion I can keep coming to is this is just pure Dan DiDio. This is pure Dan DiDio's planning, his thoughts, his thinking behind the marketing or whatever. And that's where I'm placing the blame for a lot of this just nonsense. I hope it's okay, though, and I'll certainly be watching it. I'm excited to have the trunks back. I'm excited for the big event that is the Action Comics 1000. That's going to be wonderful to see all the names and people involved in that run. But I definitely recommend people jump on Superman title at this tail end. Try to catch some of these back issues, especially the Bizarroverse story arc and any of those Action Comics that you can catch, especially 999. It was really special and really something, and I hope Dan Jurgens does return, as I'm sure he will. I really hope he returns to the character one day. I do hope and pray that Bendis's total reign over Superman in the DC universe is limited. I hope his stories turn out great, and I hope he has a long, fruitful run on at least one of the titles. But this whole nonsense of him taking over both titles and just doing everything Superman, I hope is not going to be the case. I do wonder what's going on with Tomasi and the Super Sons. They've announced that certain titles are ending, including Super Sons, and that's ridiculous, of course, because Super Sons has just been so popular. And Tomasi said it's not what you think, so I'm sure it's going to be something like they're going to rebrand, like with a DC Rebirth, but a different line, or retitle them, or maybe call it something different. I don't really think we're going to see the end of Superboy and Robin and John and Damian's stories there. And I do hope that Tomasi continues with that, so we can still get some of the Superman universe from Tomasi, which would be nice. But anyway, I'd like to know your thoughts on Bendis. What do you think of him as a writer? What are you anticipating? Are you looking forward to or fearful that he might bring to the run? I don't want to just be all doom and gloom and start saying there's going to be nothing but terrible. Yeah, some people are doing that, and I think it's a little soon to be quite that dark about it. I think that we need to give it a chance, but I'm very, very cautiously giving it a chance, and I'm ready, to be quite irate if they slip up any of these paths that I'm fearing they might go down. So hopefully they won't. Hopefully all will be well. Tune in this weekend for some more. I will try to have that Batman Stop Screwing with the Costume video out soon, and some more comic reviews, some more talk about superheroes in general. And until then, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the superhero stories you love. Thanks for watching.